Assalamu alaikum, peace. It's Coach Fatima once again with another episode in my Poly Wives Who Rise podcast. Rising above heartbreak is the topic of discussion today. Now, one of the things about heartbreak is that it hurts us, and it's difficult to come out of it because we're not expecting that someone that we love very deeply will break our hearts. I remember I went to a doctor's appointment, and I was having some heart trouble after the news that my husband married again. And I had some symptoms. They did some echocardiogram testing. They did CTs. They did all types of things. Not CTs, a heart MRI. I had a few different things done because I had a irregular heartbeat. And I remember my German-born doctor, I remember her coming in and she said that I was suffering from heartbreak. And I was like, how am I suffering from heartbreak? And then she taught me about the little strings that are attached to our hearts that can pop. And mine had started to pop. And she said, you got to calm down, because I told her what happened. And she didn't have a very good reaction, and I think she violated some different oaths that she took as a doctor, and I had to fire her. I fired her, and I never saw her again because it was a boundary of mine that she crossed, and I'm already dealing with something that's difficult. You're already giving me this news that I'm suffering from a broken heart, literally, and I had pre-existing heart condition from birth, so gestational heart disease. I have had it for years. I've had it ever since the day I was born. I probably had it in the womb. So this polygyny decision that my husband made to practice polygyny, and it was his decision. Let me be clear. It was his decision. My mismanagement of my emotions was the problem, right? And it was my mismanagement of my emotions. Not erasing them, not acting like or having this life where I'm doing this performative version of myself in polygyny. No, I was too upset. I allowed myself to get too upset. So when I was quiet, it was all getting in my chest. When I was angry and being vocal, it was all in my chest. Everything was in my chest, but I was living with this heart disease already. And I made it worse by my mismanagement of my emotions. What does that mean? Now, I talk about first responders in my trainings and my YouTube videos. I've spoken about first responders. And I said, wow, why do they call them that? I said, no, I noticed that they don't call them first reactors. And I said, wow. Because you can't go to a fire and be reactive. You can't go to a crime scene and be reactive. You can't go to a shootout and be reactive. You can't and not be effective. Because if you're reactive, it'll not only affect you, but it'll affect those around you, your children, parents, your husband, your siblings, whoever, you. And that's what happened in my life. So I said, you know what? What was my role in this? Was I reactive or was I responsive? I was reactive all over the place. Why do people get scared when we talk about nuclear reactors? Why? Because they're called nuclear reactors, which means something can explode and harm the rest of us. Now, if they were called nuclear responders, we'd feel a little bit more safe. But that word and those two words are specifically different for a reason. One is out of control and one has control and composure. You can feel whatever way you want to, but to be composed, still experiencing hurt feelings, still giving yourself grace and others grace is important. Because then when we react, our whole neurological system is thrown out of whack. Our physiology is thrown out of whack. Our brain turns itself on into fight or flight mode. fight or flight, and it becomes very difficult to reverse engineer and come out of that. So the key is to not get ourselves so riled up about the men that we have married and decided to love that we are harming ourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually, because that has a ripple effect, a domino effect, and a cascade happens. And it's down. It's all the way downhill. Because who are we waiting on to fix us? Who are we waiting for? Because what if our husbands decide, I can't help this girl. I've tried all I could. I'm done trying to make her happy. I'm finished with that. What are we going to do? We have one life to live. We have this one body to take care of. We don't get another body, another soul after this. So mismanagement of emotions can cause so much pain and so much heartbreak. I remember I had a client one time and she said, you know what, my husband, he doesn't love me at all. And I said, well, did he tell you that? She said, well, no, he didn't tell me that. That's an assumption that you created that's hurting you. See, our husbands love us. They also love their other wives or our co-wife. Just like they love children that they have. My husband has 10 children and he loves them all at the same time and his 2 bonus children. Same time. Same time. He doesn't nitpick them. He doesn't nitpick those things. But as a wife, are we putting ourselves in a position to nitpick those things for them? Yeah. We do that. And they don't come up and say, you know what, I don't love you. See, and men value respect over love anyway, so they're not going to lead with that. They're concerned about whether or not their family respects them first. Love can come after that. It might be for them respect, loyalty, trust, and love. It might be that. The majority of the time for men that are masculine men, I want to be very specific, masculine men that consider themselves and are exhibiting leadership in their family, and they don't want to be led. They do want feedback, and they do want ideas and suggestions, but they're not going to hand over the wheel to the women in their lives. Their job is to protect and provide, sustain, help, and offer their resources to the women that they love. And everything else, of course, is extra. Of course, they love them. But for them, there's a hierarchy of value and a pecking order. Mine is trust. At first, when I want to be able to trust you, I don't have to love you. So I couldn't tell my husband, well, you know what, love should be the first thing on your list of your hierarchy of value. Mine can be trust, but yours had better be love. No. Typically, and in general, masculine men say, keep your love if you don't respect me. That's what they do. And if you don't believe me, you can ask. Ask the man or the men, whether it be your father, whether it be your brothers, whether it be your husbands or your sons, do they value love over respect? So as we're settling into what we value, we think that our husbands have violated us in a number of different ways in the emotional spaces that we're in as women. So for me, I said, well, I feel very betrayed and I'm heartbroken and you broke my heart and you did this, that, and the third. One of the vital questions that we don't ask ourselves is if or do We know, did he do that? And if he did, was it intentional? The quality of the question that we ask ourselves dictates the care. I wasn't asking myself, and in many cases, we don't ask ourselves the right, healthy questions. Our questions are all toxic. How can this work? Instead of saying this can't work, instead of saying how can this work? In a healthy way. Let's complete the sentence. In a healthy way. How can that be? What can I do? What do I need to work on for this to work? For polygyny to work? What do I need to do? What do I need to change? I look at my daughters and I notice something, because all my daughters are adults and I love them very much. Shout out to them. They said something. They never looked at their dad and said, you know what, this mess, this whole thing is all his fault. You did nothing wrong, Mom. Not one of the 4 of my daughters has ever said that to me. They know what I've done that they didn't like. They know what their father did that they didn't like. You know why we don't like it? You know why our hearts are broken? Because we know we can be better people. My heart was broken because I knew my husband could have been a better man in telling me. Because that's how he presented himself to me and the rest of the world. So he shocked everybody. They went, wow, I would have never pegged him for that kind of guy. And I was like, ooh. I was like, uh-oh, it's not just me, it's not assumption. And he understood that after some time that he had presented himself in such a bold way, not obnoxious. He's not that guy, he's still an introvert, but in a bold way. And I said, that's why so many people were heartbroken, because they believed in our love story. They believed in it so much that it broke their hearts. So a lot of initial wives deal with that. Well, what happened? I had somebody, I believe they asked one of my older daughters, what did she do? What did I do? It just was like, it's got to be my fault. Or is she sick? I was either sick, I either did something to him. It was all my fault. I remember being on a live event with the other 2 coaches, Coach Nadir, Coach Nyla, and I remember a lady came into the comments and she said, what can I do so that I don't turn up like Coach Fatima? And I said, before I could check her, because she was going to get checked, Coach Nadir stepped in and he goes, what you're not going to do is come onto this live and disrespect either one of my wives. And then he just went into this whole thing and ate her up about it. Jumped right down her throat about it. It was so disrespectful. And I said, well, you might want to be like me, because then you might end up being a coach if you heal. And she came back, apologized. Well, I didn't mean it by that. She threw a shot at me directly. So it was a nice, nasty comment. I went on about my day. I had a good dinner. I was looking cute, and I didn't make me never mind. However, you have to teach people how to treat you. She was heartbroken, so then she projected that onto me. So whatever heat she had for her husband, throw it on here to Coach Fatima. She can take it. She can take it. So I don't end up like Coach Fatima didn't need to be put on the end of there. It could have stopped at and should have stopped at, what do I do, X, Y, and Z? So heartbreak can turn us into very ugly people, where we are projecting onto others that are not deserving of it, because we're not managing our emotions. Have them, feel, settle into them on occasion. Don't stay there, especially when there are negative emotions, because we'll break our hearts quicker than anybody else by what we're saying to ourselves. We're not using empowering statements. Like, what do I find beautiful about me today? What did I do for somebody else that help their lives be a little bit easier? What can I do with my children to create a space for them where they feel loved and valued and honored? How do I do that? So once we build a life for ourselves outside of our husbands and take care of our mental health and well-being, our spirituality, our fitness, our nutrition, once we keep educating ourselves, and we're grateful though, and being grateful, heartbreak is going to be the last thing that we think about. We won't have the time. And if we don't address that child that is within all of us, heartbreak will keep rearing its ugly head because we'll search for everything to be heartbroken about. Let's search for things to be whole about, to want to heal through. That's better for us. Creating a world for ourselves that does not and should not have ever revolved around our husbands. It's an easy trap to fall into. It's almost effortless. Because we go, if he's happy and the kids are happy and I take care of all these people and everything will be great. No, take care of you too. That's important. So part of the podcast is understanding that we're here to educate one another. We're here to share our experiences and discover new ways of creating and cultivating our own happy, our own version of happy in what we're dealing with, in what we're trying to grow through, and meeting the champion within. With that, I'll see you in the next episode of Poly Wives Who Rise. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.